Okay, so we have the recording started. Don't forget that these things will appear on YouTube, and if you haven't been looking at them, you can find them on YouTube now. The other thing you can do, and part of the reason I sent you the invitation today, is because you can also access the recordings from the meeting. So there's my calendar, and if I go into the meeting, you'll see that up there's a tab called Recordings and Transcripts. So you can also immediately access the meetings from there. And if you are so inclined, when you're watching the meeting, so there's last year's meeting, you can watch it straight from Teams. And you can watch it straight from Teams-ish, because what it does is starts up a browser. So your default browser, it starts that up and puts it in a tab in your browser. And because my default browser is Chrome and I don't have Chrome started, it's been starting in the background. So we've finally got there. And you can see that you can look at the meeting straight from there. Once it finally loads. Okay, so the recording has started and all. It's slow today. The other thing that you might find helpful is that when you're watching it, you can actually get it.
If you're learning guitar late in life, there's one distinction that will determine if you're going to succeed or fail. And I'm going to show it to you in this video. After teaching over 35,000 guitar students just like you, I can determine.
One of the things you can do is get it to play fast. So you can actually play these at double speed. Which, yes, makes me sound stupid, but actually, weirdly, you can still understand everything. So it lets you review it a lot more quickly. So go on here, have a look at it, and you can watch it really quickly. I don't think you can do that on YouTube. And if you can, somebody let me know, because I haven't found it. Okay, so you can get access to YouTube recordings, or you can get to them from the meeting. And if you've been on YouTube, and if you haven't, why not? Go there, subscribe, hit the bell, and you'll get to know when I publish new ones. Don't forget, you'll see a couple of them. So I'm putting up last year's as well as we go along. So that's last year's, that's this year's. And like I said, it will give you perhaps a slightly different idea of it. People might ask different questions. I might have explained it in a different way. It just might help. Okay, so that all being said, let's start on today's lecture. And what we're going to talk about today is governance. Not surprisingly, for a module called Governance, Risk and Supply and Compliance. Oh, excuse me. Not surprisingly, for a module called Governance, Risk and Compliance, we're going to start with governance. So, what do we mean by governance? Anybody who's ever come into any sort of contact with any sort of organisation will know that there are different layers involved in it. Even a simple thing like a shop, you will have in my local supermarket, you will have people that go around and put things onto the shelves, and they will have people above them who tell them what things to put onto their shelves and what's the priority, and they'll have someone above them who will manage the whole shop, and the manager will have someone above them who manages lots of shops. That's not governance, that's management, okay? They are very different things. Management is how you go about the day-to-day business of turning the goals of the business into reality. Governance is deciding what those goals are in the first place and ensuring that the organisation is governed in the best way for everyone who has an interest in that organisation. Now, that interest can be anything. It can be a financial interest. Somebody might own a part of the organisation. It could be an interest of the employee, who of course has an interest in what happens in that organisation. It could be external interest, even though you own a supermarket. If you start causing traffic jams on the street outside because people are trying to get in, that then becomes an issue for people outside the organisation. So other people will take an interest. So there are different layers of what we call stakeholders in that organisation. And we'll talk about some of them and what sort of interest they might have later on. Whoever is in control of the organisation, whoever is governing that organisation, has to make sure that it's governed fairly, that there are processes in place to do things. Whether those are HR processes, whether those are procurement processes, whether they are whatever. Those processes should be there and they should be understood and they should be accountable. You shouldn't, for example, have people in governance who give contracts to their pals, and then when the contracts aren't fulfilled, simply write off, to take a figure out of the blue, £4.3 billion for contracts that were let and were never supplied. That is poor governance, whichever way you look at it. The contracts should never have been let. If the contracts were let, then they should have been fulfilled. If they weren't fulfilled, you shouldn't just write off the money. It's because it's not your money. Because it's not your organisation, you're simply in governance of that organisation. And whether that's a business, a charity, or anything else, you have to govern in the best interests of those who have an interest in that organisation. So doing something like that is clearly very stupid, but most of all, it undermines confidence in the governance of whichever organisation you're talking about. Because if you don't, then people lose confidence, people stop wanting you to govern that organisation, and you require some changes. So good governance doesn't happen by accident. Good governance happens because people have thought about what that good governance should be. They put in principles that say, oh no, we work like this, not like that. And that when things happen, those principles are upheld. And as with anything else, these principles come from the top. So again, pulling an example purely at random, if you have employees who break the law, but the people above them know that they are breaking the law and are quite happy with that, that sets a poor example. If the people at the top had said, what are you doing? Stop this now. Then things can change. But as long as the people at the top say, oh no, we don't care, we'll take bribes, we'll give away money, we'll allow our employees to break the law, then of course the organisation will become corrupt. That applies to any organisation, business, charity, government, anything at all. Now, as I said last week, I'll talk about organisations a lot, and that's because all of these things apply to all different types of organisation. So if I have to continually say to your business or your charity or your government or your social enterprise or your, I mean, you get the point. If I have to do that all the time, it becomes very tricky. So I'm not going to do that. What I'll probably say a lot is organisation, and you'll get fed up with the word organisation. But when I do it, in your head, start thinking of all these different types of organisation and where they fit in. That's not to say that all of these organisations have the same goals. A business wants to make a profit. Charities, not so much. There might be some small issues with some of the terminology because it may change, so watch out for that and actually start thinking about that in terms of your reports. So businesses have shareholders and stakeholders, but charities don't have shareholders, but they do have stakeholders. So watch out for these things, think of those principles, and start to think how they apply to all different organisations. As ever, I'm not seeing any hands. I'm not seeing anything in the chat. Don't forget that if you have questions, don't hesitate to put up your hand, to put something in the chat, or actually just to unmute yourself and ask the question. There's fewer than 20 of us in this meeting. You'll not be stopping anything happening. In the meantime, what I want to do is show you a quick video, because we're talking about governance, we're talking about management. So let's think about the differences in those things. Okay, so that's a brief introduction to the difference between governance and management. And if I was telling a story, that's called foreshadowing, because those of you who are paying attention will notice that that came under COBIT, which actually is one of our topics for later on in the course. And that's one of the things you'll see as we go through this. All of these things are intertwined, even though we think about them, or I cover them in different sections and different topics, they intertwine, because of course they have to. If they didn't, they wouldn't work very well. So there you saw an idea of the difference between governance, who set a strategy, and management, who carry it out. If you want it in the simplest possible terms, when my children were small and I was trying to teach them some responsibility, I would say things like, okay, we need to get the dishes washed and we need to sweep the floor in the kitchen. And I had 2 children, and I would say, you sort it out, that's what needs done, let me know when you're finished. So I set the direction, they sorted out the management of it, which usually involved a lot of fighting and shouting, but eventually somebody did the dishes and somebody did the sweeping. And that's the difference in essence between governance and management. The governance sets a strategy, sets a direction, says what we want to do. The management in the organisation decide how that's going to happen, and then the workers will implement that. So here we've got a pyramid. to show how that works, in this particular case, in government, whether that's national or local government. The government will set a strategy and a direction. That will then be passed on to the civil service management, who will organise how that should work. And the civil servants will then implement that strategy. They'll do the actual work to make that happen. Now, the terminology may change, the organisation may change, the names of the people carrying it out may change, but the same sort of thing happens. So here's one for something called an IJB. An IJB is an Integrated Joint Board, and it's the way that health and social services are organised in Scotland. In essence, health services are run by the NHS and social services are run by local councils. Now, not surprisingly, there's a lot of crossover. If you have somebody coming out of hospital who's broken their leg, they may require help from social services to get settled back in the home and make sure that they're not going to starve to death. So there'll be a lot of cross-organisational working, and that's taken on by something called an Integrated Joint Board, the IJB. So the IJB will set that strategy, and it's got representatives from both of the organisations. But once they've set that strategy, it will be organised by two different organisations, councils and health boards. Councils will sort out the social services side, health boards will sort out the health side. So when this, for example, pensioner goes back to their home, the council will sort out Meals on Wheels, and the health board will sort out a district nurse to go in and change bandages. So those civil servants will then implement that strategy. Same type of diagram though, same type of pyramid. In this case, it's actually covering more than one organisation. So we've got a public sector, we've got government, we've got a couple of public sector, government and health board, and the same sort of pyramid for a business. In business, the people that set the governance are called a board. So the board will set the strategy and direction. The management will organise how that's going to be implemented. We are a supermarket. We wish to grow our business. We want to open one new supermarket per month for the next year. Management then take on that. Management have to go and scout locations, figure out how to fit out the shop, hire people. So the board will set the strategy. We're going to expand. They'll set the aims, an average of one per month for a year. And the management will organise that and staff will implement it. And at the end of the year, they'll report back to say, did you manage to do this? Did you open your one a month? Now, that reporting back will be a flexible number. If, for example, the board set this in the January and come back in the February and say, how many have you opened? Have you done your one? Well, no, of course they haven't, because it takes more than a month to find a location, fit out a shop, hire people, get things in it and get it started. But by the time it comes to June, they might be able to say, yes, we've now located 4 locations. One of them has been totally fitted and opens next week, and 3 others are on their way. So there'll be different expectations over different time frames as well. So the strategy and the direction have to take into account what happens on the ground. There's no point having a board that say, Yes, we are a supermarket, and what we are going to do is multiply our income by 10 times. Aren't we great? Okay, management, go do it. Well, how? Is that even realistic? Probably not. And any organization that has that type of governance, who set aims that are just completely unattainable, isn't doing a very good job at governing. Okay, so these sort of things work in the same way with different organizations, and you'll notice the words on the right hand side don't change. Even though we're talking about different things, we're talking about public, private, NHS, government, companies, all the stuff on the right hand side, strategy, direction, organization, implementation, stays the same. The only difference is, in essence, the nomenclature of who's doing it. Okay, are we happy with that?
Yeah. Quick question. I was wondering, is there like situations where you'd maybe have one body or company that would be responsible for the organisation of multiple companies?
Define organization.
Well, like, try to think out the word this here. Like organising the governance for like multiple companies.
One of the things I was trying to show with these different pyramids is that even though the same thing applies, it might be one organization or it might be multiple ones. So here we've got two organizations trying to do the same aim. The same thing will apply in private organizations. So you might have, for example, now it doesn't work like this anymore because they've changed, but originally, does anybody remember Dixon's? So Dixon's was an electrical shop, but the same organization also owned Curry's. And the idea was Dixon's was the kind of businessy formal one, and Curry's was the kind of home, sell you a washing machine one. So that organization set the same sort of strategy and direction for those two organizations because they owned them both. Eventually that changed and they folded them into one and they stopped Dixon's. But there are plenty of other examples where a holding company, if you like, has lots of sub-companies. So a building organization may have a few sub-companies. They may have companies that do plumbing and companies that do electrical work and companies that do general building. And part of the reason they have these organizations is because they can use the organization not just to serve their own aims. So this is a house builder. Of course, they're going to bring in their own builders and their own electricians and their own plumbers. But what if they're not currently needing any electricians? Well, maybe they could hire them out to other people. So yes, it all gets messy, is what I'm saying. So you do have those kinds of things. You do have places where they have multiple companies, I'm going to say, although I don't like the term, all under one umbrella. And the same board will be responsible for all these different organizations.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think I just worded that badly as well. But yeah, that makes sense.
I worded it badly in what way?
No, sorry, I worded my question badly. Try to explain it.
No, not at all. It's a reasonable question. But There's just different ways to approach it, and that's why I was making sure that what I'd said made sense
Yeah,
in
it
terms
does.
of what you were looking for.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions just now? Okay, in that case, let's talk about how you might go about setting a direction. As I say, it all comes from the top. And we're going to talk about something that actually has a bad reputation, a mission statement. Organizations will quite often try to encapsulate what they want to do in a short statement in order to allow them to bring everyone on board. A slogan's easier for people to get behind than a 20-page document. So dream, believe, achieve versus our purpose is to change lives, transform communities, and all the rest of it that you can see there. Hopefully you recognise the first one as being UWS, but the second one's also UWS, and it's a bit more filled out. So the question I really have is, which one works better? Which of those approaches is best? Sorry about that, clicked the wrong button, as you can tell. That wasn't a rhetorical question. Which one's best?
Well, obviously the dream, believe, achieves shorter, easier to remember, and gets the point across easier than a full paragraph.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree.
I suppose at the same time it doesn't quite describe as much as the other one, but again, it's easy to remember.
And I wouldn't disagree with that either. So maybe there's a reason for having both.
Yeah, well, I suppose if somebody remembers the first one, maybe they Google it and then they can get more information. It's sort of the idea of slogans. It can stick in your head and you remember it if you look it up.
And that, of course, is why you have a short mission statement to try and make sure that it stays in somebody's head. Okay, seeing as how only one or two of you answered that, you should see on your screen a quick poll. So, which is better? And it may be an unfair question, but if you had to choose, is it better a motion statement? I did, of course, mean mission statement and not motion statement, but never mind.
The poll's not working.
It's updating. I can see people voting.
Oh, mine's is just coming up. Problem.
It's just showing problem reaching this app.
Yeah, mine said that, and then the poll itself just appeared in the chat screen.
It should be both. It should be in front of your main.
Yeah, it was just when I tried to take it out into the actual poll app, it failed, but in the chat itself, the poll seems to work.
All right.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what mine's has done as well. I'll open the chat that was there.
Right, still waiting for 3 people to vote. I hope it's not 3 people that started the meeting and then went away and weren't actually listening in. Still got 2 to go. Interesting that comprehensive is winning, which will be news to all those admin who spend a lot of their time coming up with slogans for ads. Come on, who are the 2 that haven't submitted? Do it so we can move on. I'm beginning to genuinely think that people have just walked away from this meeting. They've started it to pretend that they're here and then walked away. They didn't realise there was going to be interactivity involved. You do know that I can look up who's answered and who hasn't. Okay, the two of you that haven't answered, we really will need to have a chat later on. Okay, so you think a comprehensive approach is better. And that's fine. Because it was a really, really bad question, let's be honest. And I said that before I put it up. The reason there are two is because they are better at different times. Try putting that second part onto a keyring. But on the other hand, dream, believe, achieve on a keyring is fantastic. And it points you towards the other stuff. So it's not really an either or. So it's a really unfair question. That said, not every mission statement achieves what it's hoping to. So dream, believe, achieve, I think, is a fairly decent mission statement for a university. Some of them are slightly less on point. To help make every brand more inspiring and the world more intelligent, which sounds fantastic until you realise it's by a company that makes sticky labels. I don't know about you, but I can't remember the last time I applied a sticky label and thought, I'm getting smarter by the second. Our mission is to operate the best specialty retail business in America, regardless of the product we sell. To say that our mission statement exists independent of the products we sell is to demean the importance and the distinction of being booksellers. So what is it, Barnes & Noble? Are you a bookseller that you're proud of being a bookseller, or are you wanting to do your other stuff too? Choose. MGM Resorts International is the leader in entertainment and hospitality, a diverse collection of extraordinary people, distinctive brands, and best-in-class destinations. Well, that's not an aim. That's not a mission statement. That is a statement. That's saying you've got there, so we can all just go home now. We can't get any better. We just can't get any better. Which certainly isn't what you're wanting to get across. That said, other organisations are far better at doing this. A world without Alzheimer's disease. Now, there's a mission statement that you can get behind. Very clear. And there's a couple of others there that are also very clear and really helpful. I particularly like the last one, because it doesn't just talk about now, it talks about the future. Better health and well-being for all Australians now and for future generations. It encapsulates the idea. It encapsulates the idea that what you're doing isn't just for immediate payback. It's something that might help later on. And I think a lot of organisations would benefit from taking that long-term view. So, in the chat, or just unmute and tell me, which organisation do you think we can be relied upon to collaboratively negotiate crowdsourced infrastructures to meet the needs of an ever-changing marketplace? Anybody want to take a guess? I can hear people clicking in the background as they try and search. Sam's unmuted, so is Gordon.
Get no idea.
Nobody want to take a guess? No. I don't know who that is, but is that you, Sam? You sound like an underwater Dalek at really low volume.
Is that better?
Oh yeah, there we go. I can hear you now.
Okay, yeah, I was talking earlier, but it wasn't playing nice. I was thinking maybe Amazon with their like AWS stuff. Sounds like it might fit.
Oh yeah, it could fit. Yep.
That's all I can think of.
Okay, what about the second one then? We have committed to authoritatively customize scalable deliverables to reach new levels of customer service. That could be Amazon as well, actually. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, kind of can.
Yeah, it sounds like it could be like a cloud service.
Cloud service?
Yeah, with scalable deliverables, so you could roll out software or hardware as a service and scale that to whatever needs.
True.
Possibly.
Could even be like Facebook, and the deliverables are like people seeing ads and stuff or something like that.
Yeah.
It kind of fits a lot.
Does. Okay, what about the third one then? Our company exists to initiate methods of empowerment that we may improve our long-term ability to initiate infrastructures. And I said that with a straight face. Any thoughts?
No, I would guess maybe that it's a more recent company though, just from how they're wording things. I'm not sure.
Nobody get any thoughts? No. Okay, well, I have to confess. Made up. Somebody's made a mission statement generator taking all sorts of buzzwords that people use, which is why you sort of thought, yeah, they could apply to what? Oh, they could apply to the same sort of company. We utilize opportunities. Our company exists to enthusiastically revolutionize diverse data to provide solutions for our partners. I mean, I believe it. We've all seen these sorts of things. Our goal is to produce emerging social networks. I'm almost certain that's Meta's actual mission statement. These things can be tricky, which is why they can be mocked. So mission statements are helpful if for no other reason than it helps staff understand what the aim is. But if you don't get them right, they can sound a wee bit made up. Okay, so on that, I think what we'll do is we'll take a wee break because that's been an hour. So what say we take 10 minutes? And I'll see you back here in 10.
No worries.
Okay, and we are back. And the sun's come out and it's suddenly very bright here. So if I start squinting, you'll know why. All right, so we started talking about governance. We'd ended talking about mission statements. So let's go back and actually look into the details of what we're talking about when we say governance. As I said before, one of the aims of good governance is to make sure that the organisation works for everyone who has an interest in it. And you see some of those people there. Sorry, there's something. Oh. I pulled over the curtains and then it decided that the sun's going to reflect off a box straight into my eyes. Do you think it would be weird if I wore sunglasses to give this lecture?
We can't actually see your camera anyway, so
You can't what, sorry?
we don't actually see you on screen.
You don't?
No, you've just got like a profile picture.
I
on
can
the presentation.
Oh, I can see him.
I can definitely see you.
Yeah.
I should be in front of the slides.
That's correct. Yeah, I can see you in front of the slides.
Mine
Yep.
isn't. I don't know. Suppose it doesn't really make much difference.
Like that.
Gordon,
I
you're having
suppose
too
it-
many technical difficulties here.
Suppose it doesn't really make much difference.
As long as you can see the slides, that is.
Yeah, that's it.
You know, if you can't see me, I'm wearing sunglasses and a bright orange t-shirt with meatloaf on it. So just to
No,
give you a
it's
picture.
just sorry, it's just the slides I see. It was just when you said about sunglasses that I don't see them.
Yeah. What are you watching me on?
Teams
Sorry? So
Through
what kind of
Teams.
device?
Monitor.
A PC or a
Yeah,
phone? Or?
no on the PC. I don't know. It's
You sure you're looking at the right window? Because sometimes Teams opens multiple windows.
No, I've only got the one open.
Because I've got like 3 Teams windows just for this one meeting.
No, it's the one.
Well, you should be seeing me like it's on a TV and the slides there and I'm in front of it talking about it. But never mind, as long as you're seeing the slide.
Yeah, that's what matters.
You just have to imagine me in all my glory. Okay, so yes. So yeah, so governance is responsible for setting up how the organization should work, giving it a direction and deciding the framework in which the organization should exist. And to do that, it has to take into account all sorts of competing pressures. You want to keep your staff happy. To keep staff happy, you give them 10% wage increases every year. But you want to keep your shareholders happy, and your shareholders want to get some money back, and they don't want you to give 10% increase to your staff every year. That's a very simple example of competing pressures that you have to successfully juggle. Now, don't get me wrong, it's in terms of governance, it tends not to be that kind of level of detail. It wouldn't be give them 10%. It would be we need to retain our staff because they're important to us. And then you tend to leave it up to management to decide the appropriate way of doing that. Is it more money? Is it more holidays? Is it more whatever? But it can be difficult to keep those competing interests going. There's lots of people visiting our supermarket. We want to make a a bigger car park. Well, the people beside you don't want a bigger car park because they're already looking into a big bunch of grey and don't want to see any more. You can come up with your own examples. The point is, you have to balance those interests of all your stakeholders, and you never will come to an optimum. You'll continue to change, and it will always be someone will want something different. I don't think I've ever come across an organisation where they have reached that equilibrium and everyone's went, yes, we're all very happy now. So you'll get to the point, you'll come up with the framework that you're going to work in, and those will then be published and made explicit as to how you're going to work. And it might be policies for how you buy things. So you might come up with a procurement policy. We will, if you're buying anything below £100, all employees can do that. Tell us what it was later. We're not worried. If you're buying something over £100,000, it has to go out to procurement, and you have to get at least 3 different bids, and you have to use all these different rules in terms of quality and cost and all the rest of it when the bids come in. Okay, so there'll be different rules and policies depending on what you're doing as well. It will also depend on the organisation. Different types of organisations will set their policies differently depending on their aims. And there will also be competing aims in terms of the stakeholders and competing interests. You might want to keep some stakeholders more happy than others. It's all very well to say we don't care what the local council say, we're going to let more cars into our car park anyway. But you can't do that because the council has a power to shut you down if you break the local rules. So some stakeholders you have to take more account of. And you have to figure out how all that's going to work, how you're going to get the information in to understand whether your policies are working, what your performance indicators are to decide whether or not the organisation is working well, how you will get that information in and ensure that the information is correct. And we talked last time about what happens if the information isn't correct. So you have to come up with these policies, you have to come up with these aims, you have to decide what you're going to do. And depending on the type of organisation, you will have different bodies that produce those. They do the same sort of thing, but they're just known by different names. For a business, it might be a board. For a charity, it might be a committee. For a local government, it might be a council or a cabinet. And one of the things that you want to make sure of when you're setting up that board is that you have a range of skills. You want people that know about things. There's no point in having a board, and I'll just use the word board, but in your head, remember it can be anything. There's no point setting up a board where everybody only has one skill. What happens if you want to set a policy on human resources and you don't have anybody on the board that knows anything about HR and doesn't know anything about the law around HR? What if you want to set a policy about how you're going to do your accounts and you don't have an accountant on the board? What if you're going to set policies on how your IT system should work and you don't have anybody on the board that knows anything about computers? That can be an issue. So you need all these different types of people with all these different skill sets, complementary skill sets, so that they can bring that previous experience to that body. That said, they also need some other assets. They must not be in a position where they are more worried about whether they will keep their place on that board than whether they will do the right thing. Again, I'll go back to writing off £4.3 billion in contracts. If that were me, I'd be jumping up and down. What's happened here? Why has it happened? Why aren't we doing anything about it? But no one is, because they're more interested in keeping their place in the organisation that did that than they are on proper governance. And the same could apply to how rigorous they were, both with setting the contracts and then looking after them later. Transparency is important, but it's also different in different types of organisation. So one of the things that we're going to look at is some governance papers. And we're going to look at them for mainly government. And part of the reason that's happening is because government have a statutory duty to publish these things. Government works for us, so we have to know how government works. So I can get access to those kind of documents and share them with you. That becomes a lot trickier if it's a private company. Because apart from anything else, they don't want their rivals to see how they work and steal their ideas. So transparency can mean different things in different places. Sometimes it can just be transparency internally, but sometimes it's external transparency too. Regardless, one of the things you must have is competence. If you're appointing someone to that board or that representative body because they will support you, because they're your mate, because they went to the same school or the same university as you, that's just stupid. And you'll never come up with good governance with that. I'll give you an idea. So for the UK government, it's not a board, it's a cabinet. So they are the people who set responsibility for different parts of policy, for implementing it, for making sure that it's done. And Dominic Raab, who, as is normal in these cases, has failed upwards. He used to be the Foreign Secretary and he's now the Deputy Prime Minister. He was appointed Foreign Secretary and didn't appear to know that Britain is an island.
That we want a bespoke arrangement on goods which recognises the peculiar, frankly, geographic economic entity that is the United Kingdom. We are, and I hadn't quite understood the full extent of this, but if you look at the UK and you look at how we trade in goods, we're particularly reliant on the Dover-Calais crossing. And that's one of the reasons why, and there's been a lot of controversy about this, but one of the reasons why we've wanted to make sure that we have a specific and very proximate relationship with the EU to ensure frictionless trade at the border, particularly for just-in-time manufacturing goods.
The Foreign Secretary, who is responsible for the UK's foreign relations, didn't know that Britain's an island and that lots of things have to cross water to get here.
Yeah, that's quite concerning.
Rigorous, competent, or what you decide.
Incompetent.
So board members need to be independent, needs to have a range of skills, in part so that management can be challenged. So the board set strategy and direction and leave it to management to implement. How do the board know whether what's happening is reasonable or not. You're IT guys, I'm an IT guy. How does the board say we need to ensure that our computing systems are suitable for our organisation? Both the management come back and go, we've been so lucky, we have managed to procure for this organisation 2,000 Apple II computers, complete with their own tape drives. What if the people on the board don't know anything about computers and go, oh, fantastic, thanks very much? What if there's nobody there that can say, are you sure? Do you really want to buy 35-year-old computers? Clearly a stupid and extreme example, but I'm sure you take the point. If the people on the board don't have the information, how can they challenge management to say whether or not the decisions they've taken are reasonable? So the board must have a range of skills that cover all of the management areas, not just some of them. And they must be strong enough to stand up to management, to bring up these things, and not just hide behind the fact that they're just happy to be there. What's that you say? You're paying me £50,000 a year to be a non-executive director of your company. Thank you. How often do I have to attend? Once every 3 months? Excellent, sign me up. Where's the incentive for that person to be independent, to be ethical, to ensure that they actually serve the organisation? And they're not just there to give an extra vote to whoever's appointed them to their £50,000, 4 meetings a year position. So you need people with skill, people with high ethical standards who are there not just to be able to say that they're on the board or because they're getting paid, but because actually they care and will actually bring all their skills and experience to bear on the job. That's why a lot of organisations actually have these things written down. They're codified. So you'll see codes of conduct that they have to do. And we'll look at some codes of conduct later and what might be in them. But codes of conduct are there to ensure that high ethical standards are at least demanded, if not always followed. So you must have people on the board that have got lots of skills, that are confident enough to challenge, who have high ethical standards. They must be transparent in the way they work, and they shouldn't have any conflict of interest. They shouldn't say, oh, do you know what we should do? We should open, or I don't know what the phrase is, let's call it a VIP lane, so that all of our friends can get quick contracts. In fact, not just all our friends, let's make it so that we can start our own companies and get contracts. Slight conflict of interest there. And for those that aren't sure what I'm talking about, when the pandemic first came in, the UK government set up a VIP lane. That VIP lane was for organisations who wished to get government contracts for things like masks and gowns and whatever else you need. Those organisations would come on the recommendation of people already in the government or their friends. And of course, they recommended people that they knew and people that they went to school with or went to university with. Sometimes, allegedly, they recommended companies that they set up specifically to bid for those contracts. There was someone called Michelle Moan who has a made-up title like Baroness or something, who's currently under investigation because the allegation is she set up a company to get a government contract, and she then also recommended that company to get that government contract. If it's true, it's a clear conflict of interest. And for anybody listening, you'll notice that I've used the allegation as the if it's true and all that other stuff, because it's not been proven yet, but I do know that there is an investigation currently taking place into it. It's odd that it's so much easier to point to places where governance hasn't worked well than it is to point to places where governance has worked as it should. Okay, so that being said, let's look at an example for an organisation that's trying to fill a place on its board. In this particular case, it's a real example. It might even still be there if you go and search for it. I know they were looking for people. And it's a director of the Highlands and Islands Airports Limited. So they run the airports in places like Inverness, Shetland, that kind of stuff. Let's look at what they're looking for and see how that ties into what I've been talking about in terms of governance. They want leadership. Yep, okay, that sounds right, because we want to have governance who set the aims of the organisation. They want a framework of prudent and effective controls. Okay, that's what we've been talking about, setting up all of these procedures to ensure that things work properly. They'll enable risk to be assessed and managed, and we haven't got to risk yet, but again, the name of this module is Governance, Risk and Compliance. Of course we're going to look at risk. They have to set the company's values and standards and ensure its obligations to its shareholders, communities and others. So again, this idea that stakeholders aren't just internal, they're external as well. They have to set the aims, but they can't just set the aims in isolation. There are other things that they have to look at. In this particular case, the National Performance Framework, a framework that's set up so that everyone can be judged in the same way. And they have to make sure that everything's in place for that to happen. They have to ensure that they meet public obligations. And again, there's another document to set that up. Here's some more nebulous ones. They have to contribute to consideration of key issues. So they'll go to the board, they'll have a set of papers, there'll be decisions that have to make. You don't want somebody that's going to turn up, get their money and go away again. You want somebody that's going to contribute, and to do that, they have to prepare for the meeting. They have to read the papers. They have to understand the information. If they don't understand the information, they have to contact staff to get more background information to ensure that they understand what's going on. And they might have to do that externally as well, so they might have to represent the organisation elsewhere. Highlands and Islands Airports is actually a wholly owned subsidiary of the government, so we own it. So not surprisingly, there's going to be lots of public meetings that they have to attend. And of course, they're going to be expected to promote and support the organisation. Develop, approve and monitor the plans. So again, these frameworks, these strategies, these aims. Approve accounts. We talked about what happens if you approve accounts and they're wrong last time. It's part of the board's job to keep an eye on the money. Monitor financial position. Make sure that the budget's going to the right place to ensure that it reaches its aims. Establish partnerships with other organisations. You're an airport, you kind of need to have a good relationship with, say, airlines, passengers, or indeed anything else. And you can go and look up these things and you'll find similar key requirements for all these other board positions that come up. Everyone happy with that so far?
Yeah.
Okay, so as I said earlier, there is a difference between governance and management. So governance set the goals, set the aims. Management are responsible for implementing those. And in fact, it's important that the board don't get involved. But on the other hand, as I said earlier, it's also important that the goals are achievable and are reasonable. So you want to challenge management to get better. So if you say to management, so we're back to the supermarket, say to management, here's what we want to do. We want to get a 5% rise in sales. 5% sounds doable. 5% sounds like, yeah, okay, let's see if there's things that we can do to attract more people, to get them to spend more money, whatever. If you say that to management, they'll start thinking about ways to achieve that aim. But what if the goal hadn't been 5%? What if management say, the goal is to get a 25% rise in sales? Management are going to look at it and go, well, overnight you want me to get another quarter of our income. Most management are going to look at that and go, well, we'll give it our best, but the chances are slim to none. And in fact, by setting such a high goal, you might actually discourage them from going for a reasonable goal. So it's important that the goals are reasonable and achievable. Otherwise, the suspicion is that the board don't know what they're doing. However, once that goal is set, it's absolutely up to management to implement them and to ensure that they're enforced. And that's a clear principle. Again, we're back to talking about COBIT that we'll talk about later in that video referenced. It's a clear difference between the governance and the management that we have to keep separate to ensure that there's not undue influence. That doesn't mean you don't get information. How are you doing on that goal on raising income? Oh, well, we've gone up 1% so far. Oh, that's good. Oh, we've gone up 2.3%. Oh, you're getting there. So the goal's 5%, you're 2.3% away. Well done. So you'll get information, you'll be able to monitor it against the goals. But that doesn't mean you get involved. If you're getting to the point where the board are running down onto the shop floor and saying, change that sign, it doesn't work well. No, what's not worked well is your understanding of your role and also your governance of the organisation, because if you don't think that board works well, then you've clearly not hired the management that have produced the correct board. So people influence things in different places. But once you set that goal, once you get reporting, you have to get that information in, and that has to be in a reasonable time. And you have to have a full picture. And again, reasonable time is a movable feast. The goal was to open one new supermarket on average per month for a year. And like I say, Timaeus doesn't mean, oh, how are you? You come back the next day, how are you doing with that goal of opening your 12 new supermarkets? It probably doesn't even mean you come back the next month and ask. Maybe in a quarter you get an update on that. On the other hand, you might want to get weekly sales figures. Depending how volatile the market is, you might even want to get daily sales figures. So there's no there's no magic number for saying how quickly you should get the information or how much information there should be. That will be different for different organisations. But again, that's part of the procedures that you'll set up as your governance. So these must be there. Everyone must know what's required. There must be a formal procedure for getting those. And that includes the risk report that we'll talk about later. And one of the things that we'll talk about is the idea that to do this, we need controls on an organisation. So GRC is governance, risk and compliance, so it's legislative. Some people would actually like it to be GRC where C is controls, or at least GRCC where it's compliance and controls. The idea is that you set limits. The control can be anything that's appropriate to your organisation. The control might be, I want to know if sales are down more than 2%. I want to know if customers are waiting on the phone for more than 30 seconds. I want to know if more than 1% of staff haven't appeared. I want to know if, well, you set the control. These are things, and again, we'll talk about them in more detail, but they're things that you don't have to do. So they're not compliance, they're not about legislation and things that you'll be sent to jail for, but they are things that make sure that your organisation is working as well as it can. So there's a lot of stuff involved and a lot of stuff you have to do. There's a lot of work and a lot of hassle. But of course, that's the same with anything. If you want something to work well, you have to provide proper governance, proper rules, proper regulations, proper controls. All of those ensure that your organisation will be successful. If you don't do all this stuff, if you have issues and don't follow these sorts of rules and just think, ah, well, they don't really apply to me, I can do this differently. That tends to be when things go wrong. The reason that there is compliance, and the amount of compliance changes depending on the year and depending who's in government and depending how much they trust organisations. Organisations want to do well, and for years that was assumed to be enough of a carrot to make people ensure that they did all these things: minimise risk, promote the integrity, still shareholder trust, all that kind of stuff. But it gradually became clear that there were some people that were coming along and weren't following the rules, weren't doing what's best for the organisation, but they were absolutely doing what was best for them. So some of these things, some of these organisations you may have heard of. Anybody come across Enron before? No? Enron was an energy company in America. Go and look up, either read up on them, watch the documentaries on them. It was such a big scandal, there were documentaries. One of the things they would do is they had a framework. So depending on the amount of power that was available would depend on the amount they were paid. So if there wasn't much power available and there was a lot of demand, they would get paid more. And if there was less demand and lots of power available, they'd get paid less. And Enron looked at this and kind of thought, hang on, the way this is set up And Enron didn't just supply the power, they also made it. The way this is set up, we can shut down a power plant. So we can stop providing power, which means that there's less power available, but still the same demand, and we'll get paid more even though we produce less power. Which sounds like genius, except it was against the law, for one thing. But it also caused real world issues. People didn't get the power they needed, which sounds, well, that's a shame, what, their TV went off. Oh no, heating went off and old people died. Air conditioning went off and old people died, depending what season it was. So this had real world consequences. And they fudged their accounts to hide all this happening. And if you're a big company, you have auditors who come in and audit your accounts and say, yeah, this is what's happening. And Enron's auditors were a company called Arthur Andersen, who at one point were known as one of the big four. They were one of the big four accounting companies, not in America, in the world. And you may or may not have heard of Arthur Andersen because they no longer exist. And why do they no longer exist? Because they didn't actually audit Enron. Instead, they went in and went, how much are you paying us? Fantastic. And signed off the accounts. Missing out the wee bit of detail in the middle where they actually checked that the accounts were what they said they should be. So Enron went down and took Arthur Andersen with them because they didn't follow good governance. They forgot that there was external stakeholders, governments involved, people involved. They forgot that they should take decisions not just on their own behalf, because the people that were taking these decisions were getting massive bonuses for doing this kind of stuff. So they were taking these decisions so that they would get massive bonuses, not that the organisation would be doing the right thing. And there are lots of examples of this, and I've given you some links to some of them. WorldCom, Royal Bank of Scotland in our own back door. And that led, these and lots of other scandals led some countries to tighten the rules. And there's something called the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. That's an American act that tightens the financial rules. There's two reasons for bringing that up. One is, for a lot of you, the sort of organizations that you work for and the sort of governance, risk and compliance landscape that you'll work in won't be just in a single country. So lots of organizations, not surprisingly, ensure that their regulations are set up to comply with the places with the most regulation. So for example, you work in a company here in Scotland, but their head office is in America, you'll probably find that you're working to the rules of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act because head office have to do it, so you have to do it here in Scotland. The other reason to bring it up is to say that not every country did this. In the UK, for example, there was nothing similar to this. Even after all the issues with the financial meltdown in 2008, even after all the idea, well, these were good chaps that we went to school with, and of course they wouldn't do anything wrong. Even after all that, there were no changes. Instead, a lot of them did rather well out of the financial collapse, getting even more bonuses to try and fix the mess that they'd got us into getting the bonuses in the first place. So there's a different legislative framework in different places. In some places there isn't a legislative framework, but there may be more than one that you have to comply with. This is getting more complicated by the minute. Any questions?
You wonder how people manage to avoid the jail doing stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like you says the guys that caused the problems, then they get another job to fix the problems that they created. It just sounds a bit crazy.
It's really crazy. I just don't get it at all. If you look at something like Enron, you'll see lots of employees of Enron ended up in jail. I don't remember a single banker in the UK getting jailed. The worst that happened was somebody lost their knighthood and had to cry about it whilst simultaneously getting £500,000 in pension every year. I think you'll cope.
Yeah, I think it's that friends in high places situation.
And that's part of what I was talking about earlier. People were brought on because it was their friends. It was people they went to school with. It was people they went to university with. It was people that they could trust to do the right thing, but not necessarily the right thing for the organisation, the right thing for the people that had brought them on. And that's an issue. Any other questions or comments just now? Okay, just before we finish this bit off then. So I said to you that one of the things that I would be doing is showing you documents that talk about governance, talk about all these other things, and that they come oftentimes from government because they have to publish things. It's in the law that they have to let people know what they're doing. So here, for example, is a council's minutes. And one of the things that you will see there is appointments to boards. Community Planning Partnership Board. The Integration Joint Board that I spoke about earlier. So the appointments to these boards for public organisations is made in public. And people could actually even attend this meeting and see who was appointed and why and all the rest of it. There's also something called a council plan. So I said that one of the things that a board does is create goals. Well, for a council, that's called a plan. And you can see there that it's a 5-year plan, 2019 to 2024. So these are examples of the kinds of papers that a board member will get. And it's worth noting here, there's 148 pages of them. And it covers all sorts of things. Appointments to other boards, outside body appointments, plans, accounts for charities, investment reports and annual reports, decisions on policies to take. So I come back to this idea that people should have skills that allow them to address these things. intelligently. If you can't read a balance sheet, you're going to struggle to look at the accounts and say whether or not they're reasonable. On the other hand, the people that have those skills might not be the same people that have the skills about becoming trauma informed. And if you don't know what that is, that's fine. And that's the point I'm making. But if there was an item on this about tightening computer systems to avoid break-ins, suddenly you guys would be all over it. So you need those range of skills: finance, IT, social services in this case. You can see it's come from the Health and Social Care Partnership. So you need people with skills in all of those areas. So there's the plan. And you can see that there's a paper. So the paper says what's going to happen. So again, I said earlier that I've been saying board, but there might be a different name for it. In this case, it's council. The purpose of the meeting is to agree that plan. And there might be recommendations. Things that the people that have prepared the papers think should happen. And the people that prepare the papers are the management. So the management have gone away, prepared the papers and said, here's what we think you should be doing. This does not have to be accepted. It can be accepted, it can be changed, it can be thrown out. It's entirely up to the board what they do. And you'll see there's different parts to it. The plan, the management framework, so how it's going to actually work, how it's going to be delivered, how things are going to change, the transformation plan, how things are going to change in order for this plan to be implemented. Item 4 is interesting. Future annual delivery plans will be approved by Cabinet and thereafter considered by the Audit and Scrutiny Committee. One of the things that you have to do if you serve on a board is learn to translate. Anybody know what that's supposed to mean? Okay, so as I said, this is the board, but it's a council. There are 33 people on that council. Council or any other board can create subcommittees of the board. And one of the subcommittees here is called Cabinet. So what they're saying is, we want you to agree the 5-year plan, 2019 to 2024, and to agree the 1-year delivery plan, 19 to 20. But we're not going to come back to the full board to agree the delivery plan for 2021, 21, 22. We're going to go to a subcommittee called the Cabinet to get that approval. But that another committee, another subcommittee called the Audit and Scrutiny Committee, will check the Cabinet's work. So there's cross-checks for things that are happening as well. And furthermore, not only are we doing this, we're going to report on it. Performance. And we'll actually have the performance management framework that has to be agreed. So you agree how you're going to decide whether or not this plan has worked. And it's important that you do that before you set the plan, or at least at the same time as you set the plan. Otherwise, how do you know that it works? You don't set a plan and go, oh yeah, that was fine, if you didn't know what it was you wanted to achieve in the first place. So you set the performance management framework, and then you get reports on it. And I said earlier that Timeously will depend on what you're doing. Here they've said, we think a reasonable time to report on these things is twice a year. Not every week or every month, but every 6 months. Now, remember what I said, this is a management proposal. This is what they think, and it's up to the board whether to accept it or modify it. So they could say, no, actually, can we have it quarterly, please? And that's what management would have to do. So it's about getting the information in a reasonable time. So that's the idea of this paper. And before anybody's attended this board, they're meant to have read this paper, understood what's in it. If they didn't understand what was in it, they have to ask questions. And if you want to ask questions, here's who you ask the questions of. And there's the phone number. But the point is, ask them the question before you get into the meeting, not during the meeting. Don't turn up to the meeting and go, what we're talking about today, boys. By the way, has anybody opened the wine yet? Read the papers beforehand, understand them. If you don't understand them, talk to somebody that does to get the information that you need before you walk in to that meeting. So that's the summary. I'll let you go through these yourself. It gives all sorts of background information and implementation information for those plans, including a mission statement to improve the lives of North Ayrshire people and develop stronger communities. Fair enough. And the vision is to be a leading organisation defined by excellence and innovative services. They want to do well. Seems reasonable. But they've also said what the priorities are. So a priority for a government is different to a priority for a supermarket. A supermarket wants to grow sales or make more profit or whatever. Priorities for a local government: grow the economy, make sure people have skills, enhance the environment, whatever it happens to be. But again, that's up to the board to decide what they are. And I've said that this document is prepared by management, which is true, but it wasn't prepared in a vacuum. Management didn't go, or at least they shouldn't have gone away and just said, aye, this is what we think. This should have taken place in discussions beforehand with the board to understand what the board's vision, because there's no point in this paper coming to the board and board going, no, that's not what we wanted to do at all. So there is work happening in the background here. All sorts of consultations with all sorts of different people, boards, staff, external stakeholders, all that kind of thing, in order to come up with a plan. And I'm going to jump over this and the delivery framework, because this is just the, remember when we were talking about the assessment and I said there's going to be recommendations that you're going to create. Well, here's some recommendations and here's some minor background information on them. But that's not the thing as such. Here's the thing. Here's the actual plan. Here's this big document saying what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, how it's going to work. All of these documents are on Moodle, by the way. You can look at these after. So there's the plan. There's a performance management framework. In other words, what are we going to do? How are we going to measure it? I'll just take the first one. Percentage of population who are involved in local decision making. Currently 51%, our plan is 60%. So we want more, but it's not stupidly more. Percentage of council budget directed via participatory methods. Budget that's spent in direct consultation with local people. Currently 0.62%, let's try and make it 2%. And so on, and so on, and so on. What the measure is, what it currently is, and what they hope it will be. Some of them are tiny, 71.2%, and they're trying to get to 72%. 84% going to 85% over a 5-year period. Because it depends what the measure is. If you really think that you're going to get 99% people delighted with customer service, you're in the wrong business. And you don't know what you're talking about. And that's what I was saying earlier about unrealistic goals. There's no point. You could say, yes, we want 99%. Yay, us, aren't we fantastic? It's not going to happen. Don't be silly. Can we make it better? Yeah, of course, let's try and make it better. And do you know, if we make 86 or 87%, even better. But let's not kid ourselves. 84% people delighted with your service is fantastic. And yes, you always want to do better, but let's not be silly about it. So there's a plan. There's a framework as to how that plan will be checked. There is a transformation plan, how we're going to get from where we are to where we want to be. We're going to look at particular things, particular projects, owned by particular parts of the organisation, and numbers put against specific savings that are expected to be made for these things, and which parts of it are expected to do it. Are we going to do it using computers? Are we going to do it by doing better procurement and getting things more cheaply? And there's no point doing all this if you don't let everybody know. Staff. This is a local government, so you want public to know. So you create documents that make it plain what's going to happen. This is an A3 poster. And you'll see some of the same things that you saw in earlier documents. Our vision, our mission, our priorities, how we are going to measure those priorities. So it's a very top level thing, telling the people that are involved, this is what we want to do. So this is the sort of thing that might go up on staff walls to remind them what we're trying to do, or on be distributed to, it's a local government, so distributed to community centres or something like that, and put up on their walls to say this is what your local council is trying to do. A single poster saying this is us and this is our plan, so that people understand what they're trying to do. And that's what's in this bit. So this is what's in all of these documents, but distilled into specific bits. How it's actually going to work. Performance against operational plans will be reported to the executive leadership team, which is management, quarterly. They'll use a traffic light system. If you don't know what that is, don't worry about it, because we're going to cover it later. But governance, board, or in this case council, and management are different. So operational plans are not considered by cabinet or audit and scrutiny. So the operational plans don't go back to governance. Governance isn't about how it's done, it's about the strategy, the direction, and checking that that's happening. How it happens on the ground is for management to sort out. But what this document does is say what you expect management to do. Deliver excellent customer service, collaborate with the community, maximize your assets, maximize your income. So broad brush aims, not specific, you will do this. You will charge 10% more for the hire of a hall. Oh no, that's management. to maximize income. And there are also expected implications. There are financial implications. This is what it's going to cost. This is what we expect to happen. There are human resource implications. Do we need to hire people? Do we need to fire people? Do we need to train people? Do we need to get people with different skills? In this particular case, there's no legal implications. There might be equalities implications. Are they doing enough for everybody? Okay, so we've got an organization that's setting its governance, setting a plan, deciding how it's going to measure that plan, and letting everybody know what that plan is. So that's governance in this particular case. Anybody get any questions about that just now? No?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so before we take a break, one last thing, so you can think about it over your break. So I said what I'm going to do is get you to submit 500 words every week. 500 words is the minimum. Sometimes you might want to do more than that. So for it, I want you to do this, except I don't want you to do this. So rather than do UWS, I want you to think about the governance structure for your case study. I want you to think about defining and explaining division responsibilities for the case study and why you might want to set those up, because that's what you're going to hand in to me for next week. You might find it useful to look at governance structures for other things. So the governance structure for that council I gave you, the governance structure for the university that you're in, they might help inform it, but the submission that you do should always be on the case study. Does that make sense? Yep. If you are going to research UWS, a couple of keywords you might want to look out for are the names court and Senate, and they'll help. Okay, all of these presentations have references attached to them. This isn't properly referenced in terms of academic references, but I'll expect your documents to be properly referenced. So if you're not sure about that, I've supplied you with documents and links about how we're supposed to reference. And clearly, if you have questions, that's what we've got tutorials for. Do not hesitate to ask. Okay, any questions just now?
No, I don't think so. Just sort of digesting information now.
Okay, in that case, let me stop the recording.